Hello, I am William Jamal Wright,
And I'm Hattie.
and this is our podcast, HattieJo. What are we doing? So how are you doing this evening?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing great. College football has officially started. Blue Devils got a victory last week, and now we just watched UNC get destroyed. So all in all, not too bad.
It's been a 3-day weekend. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a discussion today, just about parenting. I went to a
Being the experts that we are.
Yeah. I mean, this is like nobody's really an expert. Like
I'm
even
just
experts
teasing,
have. Yeah.
I'm just teasing, like, because we have had one child for all of 1 year, like.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And so we went to this. We had a conference, like professional development conference. And there was a guy that created Love and Logic, which is kind of like a parenting teaching tool that different schools here in Arizona use. We use it at MVCA. I know other charter school districts use it. I use it at Great Hearts. And so it's an interesting concept about like parenting and so I came away from we had the guy that created it. He came and talked to us last week, and he had some interesting thoughts and some like ideas, and so I wanted to kind of have a conversation about like parenting and like how do you raise a good kid, like the $1 million question.
If you know, let us know.
Because like it's funny, like I watched this, I listened to this podcast, and the host always says like absolutes are for like kids and like dummies, and so like
Yeah, we unfortunately don't live in a black and white world. We live in a gray area
yeah,
world.
and so like thinking about like that as a concept, like just kind of living in the gray a little bit, and as a parenting style, and like this one guy's kind of some opinions that he had, and kind of I would say he's done a lot of research in this, and this is kind of his philosophy on how to raise like a child, or like how to run your classroom, and things like that. And so it was interesting to like sit there, and so I'm curious as to you, like what are your like, if you were to like give a parent like one or two pieces of advice, like how do you raise a good kid, or like how do you think you raise a good kid?
Pay attention to them.
Pay attention to them? Okay.
Yeah, I think I would say two things. Number one is pay attention to them. I think a lot of the root of bad behavior is either, I think a lot of the root of bad behavior is an unmet need. Mm-hmm. And usually that need is attention. And if it's not, paying attention to them helps you identify what the need is.
Okay.
So I would say paying attention to your child. And I think paying attention to your child makes your child feel important, right? Helps you develop that bond with your child. And just like anything, right? We talk about what's the limited resource that we have? It's our time. And so where do you spend that time? Are you spending it at work? Are you spending it on a device? Or are you spending it with your child? Paying them attention, like really spending it with your child. And I think that that's kind of the number one thing. And then I think the number two thing is to respect them. I think that a lot of people have I don't have a great analogy or a way to describe it, but just like adults are like, I'm the king of my house, right? And it's like, I'm the king and you're the subjects. And not that the children are like serving the parents.
Yeah,
but like what I say goes, and I think that that's important in a lot of ways. The parent has to have control, and what the parent says does go sometimes, I don't think the child knows what's best in every scenario, but I think that there's like a way that you can do that in a mutual respect way of like
Okay.
the parent still respects the child, whereas I think that there's also a way that you could do that lacks respect. And so I don't think I'm explaining this perfectly well the way I really intend it or really want to explain it, but I don't have a good way.
Yeah, I
other
think,
ways
or
to
to me,
describe it.
I'm understanding it pretty well. Like you don't want, like you want to like have rules but not be a dictator.
Yeah,
Like,
and sometimes some select times I feel like it might be a like because I say so type thing, but most of the time
it should be like a compromise or work together.
not even a compromise or a work together, but like think about if you've ever encountered a great leader in your life, right? They inspire you to do what they are leading the group to do most of the time, just because like they make you want to do it without having to threaten or say there's going to be a consequence or a punishment if you don't do this. Like they are just such a positive, loving leader that you want to follow them, and you're not threatened or scared into making the right choice.
Yeah.
You're doing the right choice because you ultimately want to do the right choice because you have a leader in your life that is inspiring you to do the right choice. And I think that's where the respect thing comes from. I don't think I'm inspiring any 3-year-old to eat their vegetable, like that.
Yeah.
Right? But like if you respect your child from the very beginning, by the time they're now in their teens and starting to be at a place where they can really
form independent thoughts,
or be a place where they can make choices that can really have an impact on the rest of their life. That's the time that the inspiration starts to flow, and I think that's the time that having that long-standing respect becomes really important. And it's not something that you can just dive in and swoop in. Oh, at 14 years old, now I'll start to respect you.
Yeah.
And I think so. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling on and on, but those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
Yeah.
So what would you say?
Yeah. So I would say like the first thing is just kind of like similar to what you said, just like consistently be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're human, you're gonna make mistakes, but like if you consistently show up, consistently there, like you can't be there all the time, but as long as you're consistently being available, consistently having a presence, I think that's a big part. And that like you get to know your child gets to know you, and you guys you're always building that bond, and you're always consistently making it stronger for when the tough times or like the wrong decisions are made.
Mm-hmm.
And so consistency, I think, would be my first thing. And then the second thing I would say is just like having high expectations / like rules, or I'm gonna just use rules and regulations. I'll put it that way. Like
when you say high rules and regulations, though,
or
so if you say to me high expectations, I have a understanding of what that means, but I don't.
Or so I would say like high expectations, clear rules and expectations.
Clear rules and regulations.
Regulations, yeah.
Yeah.
So like try to like limit the like gray area.
Mm-hmm.
Although like as we said at the beginning of the podcast, there's a lot of gray area. Like
but as a child, again, like once they're in their teens, that's when gray area they start to understand.
Yeah.
Again, a 3-year-old is not understanding gray area.
Yeah.
I don't know why 3-year-old is what I'm focusing on, but that's. But I agree with you. I think that if you give people high expectations the majority of the time, and you're very consistent about it, and you're very clear about how to achieve those expectations, the majority of people in that environment long enough will want to and will ultimately rise to the expectations. So I think that's a great.
So where do you think kind of parents? Where do you think parents go wrong?
I would say, I mean, I think it goes back to the 2 things that I gave as pieces of advice. As a gymnastics coach for almost a decade, I think that, well, first I want to say that every parent-child relationship is unique. Every family is unique. Yeah. And you have to find
that kind of balance.
Yeah, that works for you and works for your personality and your child's personality and what they need. But I would say the most of the times that I would encounter or like pick up on strife between the child and the parent or vice versa, or watching my friends interact with their parents, I think that the respect thing was lacking. And then I think that subsequent, when I look at the smaller children, the attention piece was lacking.
So I get the like, from my perspective, I get the like attention thing was lacking, but the respect thing, like, was it like the
that,
kids,
like, dictator type.
like the kids, like just like the kids don't respect what the parents are saying? And
oh no, it's usually the parents don't respect the child as like as a individual, like as a human being with thoughts and feelings and needs of their own. And I kind of want to use the word autonomy, like they don't respect the autonomy of the dignity of the child as a human. Like all human beings are deserving of dignity. And it's really hard. I think there is a fine line when children are small, because I don't think they should have a lot of autonomy in the traditional sense of the word. But I'm more kind of meaning like this, I mean, like this person is like a little caterpillar that will one day become a butterfly, a human of its own autonomous self, and you need to help nurture that caterpillar so that the butterflies can spread its wings and be a fully formed butterfly, as opposed to some limited or some deficient,
because I'm struggling like
deficient way.
So like,
it goes back to that dictator thing.
So question number one: when do you think this autonomy kind of starts? I know it depends on the kid.
I think it depends on the kid. I think it would be as early as 8 or 9 years old, but for the average child, probably by the time they're 14 or 15.
Okay. And so just the parent not respecting the dignity of the kid and allowing them to have some autonomy for
and it's less about the rules and regulations, and it's more about the interpersonal interaction, right? Like, have you ever been around someone that's like, I can tell you're being quiet while I'm talking because it's socially acceptable that you have to let people take a turn, but you're not actually listening to what I'm saying? Or, I can tell that the social situation that we're in, you're acting this way, but I have no faith that if other people weren't around, you would really endorse the behavior or the words that you're saying. Like, I'm struggling to say it the way that I want to say it, but I do feel like fundamentally there's kind of that dictator relationship that lacks respect.
Okay.
And even when they're young and the parent needs to be more of that dictator, I think there's still a way that you can do that with respect.
Okay. So for me, I would say like typically when it goes wrong is when there is like, I would say just like very limited like oversight, and that kids have the ability to like do things that like they have the ability to like, and they have like the freedom to like
too much freedom.
Yeah, too much freedom to make choices that like can either have a negative impact or on themselves, or they have too much freedoms that make decisions that have negative outcomes. Like when they consistently do them. Like if you're, I don't know, like if you're like a sophomore in high school and every weekend like you can get alcohol at your parents' house, like
too much freedom.
Yeah, that's too much freedom. Now you're a high schooler, so you might do it once, but you get caught, you learn, hey, this is not a good choice. And so like there's, I would say too much freedom to make negative choices.
And again, to me, I would put that in the classification of not enough attention. Because I don't think that a parent, and particularly in that high school phase, I don't necessarily think that the parent has to be like, oh, I need to give you attention, we're going to spend time together 24/7. But I think there is something to be said for attention to the child's needs, right? And making sure that there's a providing for the hierarchy of needs that the child has.
Yeah.
And so when the child is really young, I really do think that attention is one-on-one, like we're spending this time together, quality time. And as the child ages, that attention piece becomes less of the time necessarily, but more of the parent attending to the different needs of the child and the different ways in which those needs can be met overall.
Yeah. And so that would be like my number one. And so kind of going into like what our discussion with at the professional development. And so we really got into talking about like, so it was all Christian schools that were there. And we really, like, one of the earlier topics was how like a lot of kids, once they leave high school, right, they like go out and they kind of leave their faith. And so it was interesting. The guy said that like we are seeing a trend that when high schoolers leave and go off to college, they leave their faith. And he's like, it's because the faith is not theirs. It's something that was put on them. It's not something that they have ownership over. Like, it's not their faith. It's what we as schools, as parents, put on them. And then now whenever they have the chance to make that choice, it's like they're like, I don't want to make that choice.
And again, I feel like that's the dictator aspect, right? You're going to do this because I say so, you're going to do it. And so they learn, well, it's going to be bad consequences if I don't do this. It's easier if I just do this.
Yeah.
But now if I'm in an environment where those consequences don't exist,
I get to make the choice.
Then I don't want to do it. Yeah.
And
as opposed to teaching them or somehow inspiring them from their own inner self to want to follow something or act a certain way or whatever.
And so that's the thing, like that was one of the first points that the like speaker really brought up that was really like, it got me thinking, like as a parent, as like kind of an administrator, like how do we create like children, or how do we inspire children, because you can't create it, right? How do you inspire children to like take ownership of like their choices? How do you inspire, for as an administrator at a Christian school, how do you inspire them to take like ownership of their faith, so that they like, it's who they are and it's what they believe and it's how they want to act. It's not something that like is pushed on me. And so that's really like a difficult choice. And I think as we like grow older as parents, I feel like that's going to be something that like I'm not sure if I will ever get the answer to, because like in order to really truly have true ownership over it, like you have to be put in a situation where like I like nobody else is making this decision for me. Like,
right, you have to give up control 100%. Yep, and that kind of just reminds me of, I don't know where I heard this, but somewhere I heard it, just kind of the concept of, if God is all knowing and all like has all this power, why would he create free will, right? If people could choose to not love him or to be away from him. And it's like, well, if he creates it where everyone just loves him, that's not real love. You have to have that lack of control, and you have to have that choice for it to be really the love that he's wanting. And so it just, that parallel in my mind based on what you said, my mind thought that up, and it felt like a parallel based on how you said that and what you said. But I think that's, again, I think that goes back to kind of, I keep using the word dictator, and I don't mean that everyone is threatening or that there's this scary or, bad, any of those connotations. But I think there is a lot to be said for encouraging kids to be inquisitive and ask questions, and if things don't make sense, let's talk about it, right? As opposed to, well, no, like it's gonna be this, and this is the way, or like it's off limits, we don't talk, right? And so I think that again, that's respecting their natural curiosity or respecting their intelligence of, hey, they've noticed something that doesn't make sense. Let's talk about it. Let's treat that as normal and good, so that they can work through it, and you can give them the tools and the information for them to make their choice. But if you kind of stifle that or kind of try to be like, no, we're on this path, and as soon as their eyes diverge, you're like, nope, eyes back on the path. Like, that's only going to make them more interested in you know. So if it's like, well, we can look at that, we can talk about that, let's see how we think about that.
Yeah.
I think that just helps people for whatever it is you're trying to teach them, or trying to instill in them. And again, that goes back to like respecting them as an autonomous human being that has its own choice to make. I am helping you make that choice. I'm empowering you with tools to make that choice, but I'm not trying to put my choice on you.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the best way that I've been able to say it in this whole conversation.
Yeah. Well, that kind of really goes into what like the speaker of like at the talk said, and he was basically like, in order to become a good decision maker, like you have to you have to make decisions.
Right.
Right. Life is about this cause and effect, and like you have an action, and there are consequences for that action, and so like the decision making process, like that's something that has to be developed and grown. Mm-hmm. And so the best way as like parents and as like teachers is give kids these low stakes situations where they have to make the choice. Mm-hmm. Right? They have to like they get to make the choices and they have to live with the consequences. Mm-hmm. Right? We can't you can't, as a parent, I think of past generations of parents, and I can see how like I would think that, hey, I need to protect my kid. All right, how do I protect them? I protect them and I help them grow by like making sure they always make the right choices. All right, so like, hey, should I eat my dinner tonight? Yes, you need to eat your dinner tonight. Like, even if I'm not hungry. He used this like example a lot. Yeah. Like, even if I'm not hungry. Yeah, but you're probably gonna get hungry later. So like, you need to think about it and you need to like eat your dinner. Like, don't eat ice cream before your dinner. Like, that's gonna ruin your appetite for dinner. So like, save ice cream till afterwards. And so, yes, we can all see that that's the right choice. And so you think as a parent, like, I best protect my kid and I best make them a good decision maker by having them helping them to always make the right decision, as opposed to like empowering them to make their own choice.
Right, because I can tell you, for someone that's never went to bed hungry, they don't really understand why it's important to eat their dinner, right? Like, I mean, it's the same thing with, you got to bring your jacket, it's cold outside. No, I don't want to wear my jacket. You know, and I feel like if it's always like, well, the parent brings the jacket, swoops in and saves the day when the child gets a little cold, yeah, in the moment that saves an uncomfortable, experience for the child being cold and an uncomfortable experience for the parent dealing with a meltdown. But then the child just learns, no matter what choice I make, my parent will fix it, right? Or they learn that this doesn't really matter, right? They never suffer. Like, and I'm not saying that they need to like suffer extremely, but I think the child that goes to school in flip-flops, has to walk home in the snow in flip-flops, learns to maybe not wear flip-flops on the day it's snowy. Ask me how I know, right? Like, I think that there is and again, that's like a low stakes thing, right?
I would say like wearing flip-flops on a snowy day.
I mean, it wasn't like snow up to my knees.
Like,
and it's a very Colorado thing. Like, it wasn't like there was snow outside when I chose the flip-flops. I wouldn't have chosen the flip-flops. But when the forecast says it might snow, like, maybe flip-flops are not the best choice. Anyway.
Lessons learned,
yeah. But and I think, how many of you have had friends in your adult life, especially with relationships, where from a mile away we can all tell, like, this is not right, like, don't do these things. And yet the person, you could tell them a million times if you wanted to, and they wouldn't, right? They have to go through it themselves to learn, it's the same thing with all types of decisions.
Yeah.
And so I do think that and again, that's why I think the paying attention is so important, because you need to determine what types of decisions is your kid ready for, right?
Yeah.
Because again, you can't tell a 3-year-old, okay, pack your stuff for this snowy day. Like
Yeah,
that's
I think
beyond
we're
them, right?
and I don't think any of this is talking about like less than like
No, but
third
I guess
grade,
what I'm
but,
trying to
like,
say is
yeah.
every kid is different, and some children need more oversight from their parents longer than others, and some children, depending on what the type of decision is, might need more intervention from their parents.
Yeah.
So
But I would say
So
we're
you
past
really
the
do-
3, like we're past it.
No, I
like,
know we're past the 3-year-old, but
we're in
like-
the 9 to 13-year-old.
yeah,
range.
but
yeah.
but I'm saying you really have to pay attention to determine what that is for each kid,
Yeah.
because I do think it varies a lot.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And it's like you kind of and like I would add, in order to be a good decision maker, you got to make some bad choices. And like
Yeah, you
somebody
have to just
once
make
told
decisions,
me,
and you're
yeah.
never going to be 100%.
And somebody once told me like I was doing like a sports leadership thing at Duke, and our sports psychologist Greg Dale was talking at the time. Rest in peace, Greg Dale. But he was like, you know what? Like leaders, they lead and they have to make a lot of choices, but they don't always make the right one. But you know what they do? They make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then like everyone, like you get up and then the next time you come up, like you're better equipped to make the next choice. And so like as a leader, and we kind of face, I would say this was kind of a trend, like students, as like future leaders and leaders on their teams, kids were like, had anxiety about making choices. Like they were worried about like what was going to be the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like how would my teammates see me if I do this? Like taking the lead like would cause people like anxious and like lead to inaction.
Mm-hmm.
And we tried to get them to see that like when you're a leader, you got to make a choice. Like
Mm-hmm.
you got to make choices, and then once you make a choice, whether it's good, different, or in bad, like then the next choice becomes a little bit easier. And every time you make a choice, like it becomes a little bit easier, and you get better at doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of to, I would say the big part, kind of takeaway from this session was that he was like, as parents, you don't want to be like helicopter parents, or like you don't want to be kind of drill sergeants. And I would say I probably fall closer to the drill sergeant, especially when I was a teacher. But as a parent,
I mean, teacher is a different role
Yeah.
than parent. So.
but I would say he would argue that like they're similar.
Very
like, in
similar,
how,
and you
like,
still need to be a good leader in both.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, I'm just
And so
acknowledging.
he would say like you don't want to be a helicopter parent, and you don't want to be like a drill sergeant, but you want to be more of a consultant to like help your kids like make good choices, but like don't have them be your choices. Like the kids have to take ownership of it, and they have to be able to live with the choices that they make.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to develop a child that can like live with the choices that they make, and like you have to be honest with them. Like
Yeah, I'll never forget when Lou, my advisor, told me about one of his kids.
Yeah,
and
I
I
think
don't
this is
even.
what I got
Yeah,
like,
I'm
yeah.
sure I know I've told you this story a bunch of times. And I don't even know what it was about anymore. But he was telling me, he's like, it hurt so good. Like I didn't want them to make this choice, but they said to me, or I think they might have said it to his wife Marisa, like,
yeah,
Mom, I know the consequences and I accept them. I'm doing this choice, right? And they're like, that's all we want them to do is, to think through these things and come to the choice they want to make. And like, no, I didn't want him to make that choice. But he has that thought process about it, like,
yeah,
and so it was one of those like, but that, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, everybody is different.
Yeah.
And everybody does have a different value system, different interests, different things that are important to them. And so on some level, once the child is mature enough, you really have to just allow them to live their life according to how they want to live it. as long as you have, well, not as long as, but the goal would be that you have instilled in them this ability to think critically about the consequences of different choices. And I think it's also impossible, particularly as an adult with the types of choices that adults need to make, to know the consequences of every choice, or to know all of the consequences, right? You can have ideas about certain things, but hindsight is always 20/20. And so I think on some level you have to also learn to have faith in yourself to figure it out. I think these are the consequences, so I'm going to choose this choice, but there might be some hidden consequences in there, and you have to just learn how to deal with it.
Known unknowns.
Yes. But again, I think that's a skill that parents can help teach their child, and that you really need to practice that resilience.
Yes.
In order to be able to put it into effect.
Yeah. And so one of the last things that that really stuck out from this talk, and it really got me thinking about basketball and our basketball team. But also
another
as
role,
a
coach, you got to be a good leader. Yeah.
So he said, if you want to help people grow, you can never consistently work harder on their life than they are. And that really hit me. If you want somebody to grow, eventually, if we want Winnie to become a productive member of society, we can't.
Yeah, we can't
care
do it
about.
for
We
her.
can't do it for her.
She
We
has to
can't
have
care
ownership,
about. Yeah, we can't care about it more than she does, because it's ultimately gonna fail. The person that's doing it, they have to be the one that care. They have to be the one that gets it done.
Well, because at the end of the day, they're the one that has to do it.
Yeah.
Right. That's something I remember. One of my gymnastics coaches, Miss Vicky, would say, I can't do it for you. I can't get up and do your beam routine for you. You're the one that has to want to do this. I can help you do it, but if you don't want to do it, I'm not going to threaten you or punish you. We're here to have a good time, but if you have goals, I'm happy to help you achieve those goals. And if you don't have goals, that's fine too, but don't expect me to be the one pushing this through, because at the end of the day, I'm not the one doing it.
Yeah.
You're the one doing it. You have to want to do it. And that was something that was really interesting to me, because again, it was I was a little bit later. I guess I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. But I remember feeling that that was a distinct change in coaching paradigm from all the other coaches I'd ever had. And a lot of the other coaches I had either had the this is really fun and you really like it and we want to help you have fun, or had the fear tactic, you're going to be in trouble if you don't do this. And so I just remember even at that time thinking wow, this is so different. And I really appreciated it, because I do think that, again, that goes back to recognizing and respecting the athlete. The athlete gets to choose what journey they're on. Yeah. Right? And an athlete might say, yeah, I do have big dreams and goals, and I need you to be a little harder on me, right? Or the athlete gets to say, I'm just here to have a good time. To spend the 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. hours so I don't get into trouble, that's also perfectly fine, right? And because the athlete is the one doing it, they should have the freedom to make that choice, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I kind of on a tangent there, but I do think that ownership and that kind of putting in the work is recognized by all parties. So yeah, I thought this was a great topic. I really was heartened when you came home after this to be like, oh, you had all this exciting stuff to talk about, which is always the mark of a good speaker and good experience. So.
Well, it's funny. I've been to 2 conferences since I've started this job, and they both have been pretty really good speakers.
Yeah.
So, learning a little bit, or I don't even know how much. I would say I'm learning some new stuff. I've done Living Logic before, but this was kind of a different perspective, and so I'm learning some new stuff.
Nice. Well, and sometimes too, even if you're oh, I agree with that, if asked, and if we had a 30-minute podcast about it, I probably would have gotten to that same thing. Sometimes it's just thought provoking to hear it in a certain way,
Yeah.
or when it's spoken really eloquently, or when the points are made really well, it just kind of clicks in your mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you had that experience. That's great. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Deuces.